Hello, everyone. Welcome to LabOPEX Live. We are so excited today to have some special guests, Andre Gauss and Nancy Ross. And as you know, we're going to be talking about empowering medical lab professionals with process improvement tools. Really excited about the discussion that we're going to have today. Andre is the Chief Operating Officer of Power of Process, and he's going to tell us more about himself, his background. And Nancy, I'm going to introduce Nancy as the founder of Improve LLC. She'll tell you more about herself, and I'm sure a lot of you already know them, but we'll have a chance to talk about them, to talk about their interest in process improvement and how we can actually introduce or connect that to the lab. And so I'm so excited. So Andre, welcome to the show. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lana. Hello, Nancy. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Andre Gauss. I'm the CEO of Power of Process, which is a learning and development company that empowers scientists and labs to work more effectively and efficiently through trial and tested tools and methodologies. And by doing that, enhance patient experience and care. I have a passion for people and processes and to help them maximizing their performance. I'm in the skills development arena for the past 27 years. And thank you for the invite and opportunity to share some ideas about lab performance improvement.
Thank you so much, Andre. I know you do have a passion for people and process. And we have another passionate guest, Nancy Ross.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Lona. Hi, Andre. My name is Nancy Ross, and I am a laboratory professional, have been for the last 20 plus years. I'm currently working as a laboratory operations manager at a major healthcare center in New York City. And in addition to that, I'm the founder of Improve, which is a laboratory consulting company, which focuses on process improvement. So I'm really excited to be here with both of you and those who are going to join us through the live feed to talk about process improvement in the laboratory industry.
Welcome. I'm so excited. And I'm going to welcome a few of our guests that's joining in. And the others who haven't put your name, just let us know who you are if you're here. We want to welcome you. Don't be hiding. Just let us know if you're here. Tell us where you're coming from. So we have Lisa Wiley. Lisa is a real great support of LabOPEX Live. She's been on the show before. Welcome, Lisa. Angela was on the show last week. Welcome, Angela. We have a really interesting show today that a lot of lab directors, managers, and medical lab professionals in general will benefit from. Mm-hmm. And Rhonda, welcome, Rhonda. Rhonda is in quality also. I think she has a great interest in that area. Welcome. And Lisa is saying, thank you for having me. So, yes, it's really an interesting topic, how we can actually utilize process improvement in the lab, and not just utilizing it because we have always utilized process improvement, but how can we empower medical lab professionals to use some of these tools? And so before we go into, we want to ask our guests generally, what is process improvement? So I'm going to start with Nancy. Maybe I'll start with Nancy. Before we even get into what is process improvement, I'm going to ask Nancy, how did you, Nancy, get interested in process improvement? Tell us a little bit about, your background and how you got interested in process improvement.
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. So I guess taking it back to my beginnings, I'm a U.S. Navy trained medical technologist. I had the opportunity to serve in the U.S. Navy, and that's when I really first became involved with laboratory medicine. And back then, I was the lieutenant's right hand, and she was all about quality assurance. So from the very beginning, I was really exposed to quality and what quality means in a laboratory setting. And back in those days, we thought it was all about regulatory compliance and maybe doing a couple of QI projects, here and there. And my interest, continued through the years. So as I moved on from position to position, and as I matured in my career as a laboratory professional, I just felt myself gravitating towards the concepts of quality. How do we do things better? How do we improve processes? And that's really my journey, through a process improvement in the laboratory. So
Awesome. And for Andre, tell us a little bit about how your background connected you to, as some people call it, performance improvement, process improvement. And I suppose performance improvement is kind of a big umbrella that encompass process improvement. But how did your background, how did you got into process improvement, and even that connection now with lab and process improvement?
Thank you very much, Lona. So my background is I'm an engineer, and I always had a passion for people development. And the question that I always asked was, why do we train people? What is the purpose of that? And by the end of the day, it is to give people the tools to perform. And for people to perform, that's directly relational to business performance. And by the end of the day, we want our businesses to perform and to answer the question for businesses, why do we exist? And then 6 years back, I was employed by a company with the name LTS Health, which is a lab performance improvement company. And I developed a learning program for lab performance improvement based on 23 years of lab performance improvement experience. And that is how I got involved in performance or process improvement. And then since 2018, the learning part of LTS Health, split away, and we started the learning and development company with the name Power of Process. And as I say, the more I get involved in labs and realize the value that they can add to people, it's just amazing, because they make us live longer. And it's very interesting, to find out how can you empower lab professionals to do things better. And then from an engineering point of view, I think some of the things that goes wrong is that you're a scientist actually, and the moment when they promote you in terms of a manager, or they tell you, listen, you must now try to do more with less, it's difficult because you don't have tools. You're not skilled to do that.
Sure.
Because it's a completely different skill set. And that is why I enjoy what I do so much, because if you can give people the tools to be more efficient and effective and understand processes, we can change the world. That's what I believe.
Awesome. I just love that, because yes, a lot of times I know I've heard that because a lot of people move into leadership, or even as a medical lab professional in general, you want to improve something, and you think, maybe if I just use my common sense, that will work. But then with time, after, for me, I accidentally got into first quality management. I got really excited when I got into quality management at a high advanced level, and then saw that connection to improving processes.
Correct.
And then made those connections to not just the process, but the people. So it was more like a journey where you realize that you can't expect people to work well without great processes, but at the same time, you can't just focus on the process and not the people. So
it goes hand in hand, right? It goes hand in hand. And I just wanted to add to what Andre was saying is that, we find so many different process improvement tools and this mindset in so many different industries. And the laboratory field just lends itself so beautifully to implement some of these tools that are out there. And yet I don't feel like, it's something that's well known or something that is widely, taught within the field. I don't know if you both agree with me. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited that we're talking about it.
Nancy, I fully agree with you, because you talked about tools, and that's exactly the thing. if I can use an analogy, if I dump a lot of tools and ingredients on your table and I tell you, listen, you are going to bake a Black Forest cake, and I don't give you anything else, you will not succeed. And because you don't have a recipe. So there's so many performance improvement tools outside, and that is what it is. It's tools. But if you don't know how to apply that tools in context, that's not going to work. And that is what I realized when we develop the programs. It's to define a recipe with all the ingredients and the tools that's out there and additional tools that will empower you in a structured approach to improve the performance of your laboratory and to empower people.
Yeah, it was after I learned how to use those tools, then I realized that it's not something that you can just go and grab and do. So as much as I hear that maybe this is common sense, because you've learned those tools, you want to help others to understand how to use them. And so we're going to talk more about that. Let's say hi to some of our guests. Wilhelm is also with LTS, and he's saying I'm here.
Hi, Wilhelm.
Here to support Rhonda, and I think we're networking in the chat, which is great. Rhonda, Elizabeth, Aro, hi. Hola.
Oh, Horacio, hola.
Is that that must be meant for Nancy, right? Ali, and Angela's saying exactly. I have a bunch of tools in my house that I don't know how to use.
Yeah.
So that is such an interesting thing for Andre, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And try to kind of define, because there's just so much that gets thrown around, not only just the tools, but different techniques. You hear about lean, you hear about process management, you hear about just so many different things. And, it took me a while to figure those out. It was like a journey. So I'm going to start with Andre. Help us to understand, in general, what is process improvement? Because a lot of people don't even say process improvement. I hear people say, I'm going to lean the lab, or, I think lean is kind of one of the most common one. And there's a lot of misconception with that also. So help us understand, either if you want to use process improvement, performance improvement, tell us the difference, tell us some of the tools that are involved in it. And, if there's an area in which you focus on and why you do focus on that. And I'll also ask Nancy.
Thank you, Lona. I think I just want to go a little bit back. When they design a laboratory, let's say the first time when a lab is going to open, then they have a specific test menu in mind with specific equipment, and you can staff, you can build your infrastructure, your lab, and you have specific people. But the problem is when the external environment is changing, right? Then your volumes can change, your test menu can change, and 5 years down the line, you are not structured, to handle the demand and the test menus. Like when the lab has opened in the beginning, and also new technology emerges. So there can be new technology, that can help you, analyze different types of tests, like 5 years ago. And then suddenly to get to that demand, or to handle the demand, then what does labs do? They say, oh, I need more people to do this because suddenly I cannot do the job. And then I start moving people around. And then currently say, oh, but there's a new analyzer on the market. Let's put that analyzer in the market. And then what you're doing is you actually start breaking your processes. And the people, doesn't know that. And then you have people that doesn't have job descriptions because the job description has changed. And the skills development plans are not aligned to those job descriptions. And then once the skills development plans are not aligned to that job descriptions, then your performance management system doesn't work. and your performance management system is not aligned with the operational objectives and the vision and the mission of the organization, and then it starts getting a whole mess, and the whole thing starts getting, you know, outdated, and you start with inefficiencies and ineffectiveness, and the people doesn't realize that. So the thing is, you need to make them understand and give them a structured approach and say, hey, whoa, let's just stop and let's check what's happening in, you know, in my lab. What does my current data tell me? Where am I in terms of performance improvement? You know, what tools can I use to define where am I currently and what is the future relevance of my lab? So we've recently launched a great tool which is called the Lab Relevance Compass, you know, which is available on our learning platform, labvinelearning.com. Which touches 13 domains where you can take that assessment with your team and you can determine the things that's going wrong in your lab. What is the problems? What is the pain points? And what is the opportunities? And then that thing can, or the assessment can tell you in terms of that report, you know, what is the focus areas of you and the team. So the first thing is to determine, you know, where am I in terms of performance? And once you figure out what is wrong, then you can start prioritizing the things that is wrong and say, well, let's fix these things. You know, it's like going to the doctor and you say, I'm really not feeling well. And you don't know what is wrong with me, okay? And they say, well, let's do CT scan. So I'm going to analyze you from your head to your toes. And let's check what's happening and what's the things that's wrong. And then you focus on that specific area. And by focusing on that specific area, you can get different types of treatment, different types of medicine. Like Lean, as an example, you know, use value stream mapping and it reduces waste. So it fits inside the structure, you know, of what you do. So it's a complete process from beginning to end. And then once you've identified these things and you've analyzed the data, then, you know, there's like you need to build your business case. People don't know how to build their business case. Then you need to, once you get approval to basically implement your business case, you need to put a project team together. People don't know how to do project management. And then, you know, after that, it's change. And people, they say, oh, people love change. They hate change. People don't like change, you know. And how do you do that change management? So in the structure of the training that we provide people and help people is basically from the cradle to the grave, from identifying what is wrong, where do I want to be, what is the delta, how am I going to address it, and how do I implement it till the end. And you need to repeat this process continuously to make sure that your lab stays relevant and that you don't break it. And once it's there, you can then basically, let's say, for example, use process mapping to look at all your policies, all your procedures, which directly feed the quality management system. You know, so the whole thing, everything is like connected with each other into gear. So that is in broad, you know, what I do and what I like to help people with and empower them.
I love that. I love that holistic approach. You know, it's not like, I mean, it doesn't say that you're going to throw away Lean or you're going to throw out change management or you're going to you're actually utilizing everything.
Yeah.
And so there's this thing, program, business process management, which is really people, process, and technology. And I love what you said about the business case, because a lot of times we're fixing. First, we haven't done any assessment. So we're just putting on Band-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't really have a business case to what it is that we're trying to do. How is this going to affect our the whole business of the lab?
Correct.
And so you're going to involve both leadership and people and of course, project management. So what you're talking about is using all these different skills, putting them together to have an efficient or an optimized process, which is great, very holistic, which involves people.
Yeah. And, you know, I just wanted to add that, you know, great answer from Andrea. But I think, you know, sometimes it all starts with the mindset, right? So I'm also a little bit more inclined towards people. Processes, of course, they're all important, and that's what we breathe and do in the laboratory all day. But if you don't involve the people, then, you know, you're not going to get anywhere. And so a big part of what I try to do is to empower my staff, because they're the ones in the front lines anyways. They're the ones that are doing the work. They're the ones that have the best ideas most of the time. I'm sitting in an office, I come in and out, but they're the ones that are out there dealing with the things every day. And so we try to solicit their ideas and their input. And really, when you do that is when you really see the power of process improvement at work, when you are able to motivate your staff and get them to buy into the mindset of continuous quality improvement, which is really what process improvement is all about. And also, I wanted to talk about the why, because, we can talk about performance improvement, we can talk about cost savings, we can talk about all these added benefits of process improvement. But at the end of the day, the reason why this is important is because it improves patient care. So what we do directly impacts, the results and the patients that come into the hospital or whatever your setting is. And if you have a better process, therefore your results are more accurate, your staff morale improves, you're more efficient. There's so many benefits of it, but at the core of it, I just think we can't forget that it's all about patient care.
Yeah. So for you, Nancy, is there any aspect of process improvement? I know you talk about the people. Is there any specific tool that you prefer to use, or do you look at it in a more holistic way? What works best for you?
Yeah, no, I think I'm also aligned with the idea that it depends on the problem that you're dealing with. For you to select the tool that you need the most. Like, I'll give you a good example that just happened recently. I was involved in a huge automation implementation at the hospital where I work. And so we were going from no automation to automation. And so that was a big change for my staff. It changed the way we handle samples. It required a lot of training, a lot of understanding of what it means to work with automation, and how automation can be quirky at times, and then it breaks down, and then what do we do now? And so a lot of it was change management. So it was a huge project for us to handle on so many different fronts, renovating the lab and implementing the actual track in the laboratory. But the biggest piece there was change management and just handling the questions that were coming up from my staff and making sure that they felt comfortable. And so we did a lot of work to train and then train again. And, it was a lot of planning to make sure that when the go live date came, they felt confident that they could handle whatever was going to be thrown at them. So I think that it depends on the problem that you're facing. And that's why, I am in agreement that we shouldn't only think about lean. We shouldn't only think about process mapping or value stream mapping, because, it depends on the problem that you have. And then that allows you to select the tool that you need. A really important tool is the root cause analysis. I think, in our laboratories in general, there's a tendency to be solution focused, but maybe a little bit too fast. Mm-hmm. And if you don't take the time to do a real problem assessment and figure out what the issue is, maybe the solution that you're selecting is not going to fit that problem. And a few weeks down the line, or maybe a few months, you're back to, where you started. And so I really think that, again, it depends on the problem that you're facing for you to be able to select the tool that you need.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying, Nancy, because by the end of the day, it's all about, human performance. How does your people perform? And there's a combination of things, when you analyze that. So I think inspiration and motivation is a big thing. So what does you as a laboratory leader do to inspire your people and to make sure they are motivated? I think a second component is the environment. So how does the layout of your lab look like? To make sure that people do, their work effectively. And the project that you were involved, like a total, complete automated system. Now, if you think about that, look at what's the issues that's going to come at that. Mm-hmm. So these people are, they normally used to do things manually, as an example. Now, everything is automated, so it's a big portion of change management. Now, if you analyze it, let's say, for example, you do, let's say, a boundary analysis. So just to get away now with the technical jargon, but you will do a process analysis to say, okay, am I a histology department or a hematology department? And then you have a boundary analysis. what's inside that process boundary. So let's say we've got specimen reception, the pre-analytical area, the analytical area, and the post-analytical area. And inside that work boundary, you have manning points. So inside the manning point, so let's say, for example, pre-analytical area of the histology department, there's a kata bench or, the microtome. And inside that, there's a human and there's equipment and there's tasks that needs to be done. Now, if you look at that task, you need to bolt out that task because there's a combination of tasks. So when you tell people, hey, I want to sell you training, then they say, no, we got training programs. But think about it, the components of training to get people competent in the holistic view, there's a combination of different things. Like there's generic stuff that the person must know, like, ISO 15189, the code of business conduct, ethics, and so on. And then there's technical stuff. That is why you went to university and to learn what you do, and that is what the scientists do. But then there's functional stuff. How do I run my lab as a business? How do I make my processes more effectively? How does my policies and procedures and stuff work? And then there's like the management and leadership stuff, okay, that you can use. And on top of that, there's also the soft skills. And each one of these domains are, on their own, but in combination, that is what makes your people, that's the thing that make your people to perform. And coming back to your example, so all your, I guess that all your policies and procedures and your skills development plans and everything is outdated once you have done an upgrade to a fully automated process. So there's lots of work for people to establish all of those things. And one of the components inside, this program is, for example, process mapping. And what is a better way to build your policies and procedures and your job description by using process mapping? So process mapping is not only, let's say, for example, for performance improvement, but that informs all the things that you need to get that, to tick that quality box, inside it. Yes, and that's all about the components that drives human performance.
Yeah, process mapping is one of my favorite tools. It allows you to see the entire process from beginning to end. And when you're having trouble with a specific process in the laboratory, sometimes if you just sit down and do a process map of the entire thing, you are going to be able to, the inefficiencies are going to jump at you. You're going to say, but wait a minute, why are we going back and forth here? Why are we touching the sample so many times? And the opportunities for improving that process and making it more efficient also will be really evident if you do a process map.
So true. So true. So looking at that big picture. So I suppose that's not something that you can just figure out on your own unless you understand the whole training or how to use these tools, especially process mapping. That's something you have to learn and understand how to read the process map. Mm-hmm. It's so important to actually assess. So Angela is asking, do you recommend performing risk assessments initially, or do you recommend using department goals?
If I may take that one. So I think we do a combination of both, depending on what you're dealing with. Prime example was throughout COVID this past year. We had to do a risk assessment right away and see what kind of samples we could obtain through the pneumatic tube system, for example. I don't know in everybody else's laboratory, I'm pretty sure it's pretty consistent, but here we don't accept respiratory samples through the pneumatic tube system because of the risk of, spilling. And again, we're in a pandemic, time right now. So in that scenario, a risk assessment needed to be done, and it needed to be done, quickly. We also have department goals. So I think any laboratory can do a combination of both, depending on, the topic and what you're looking at. We also have a quality dashboard where we monitor different metrics for the different departments. And oftentimes just looking at your data, if you're monitoring your data on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, whatever you're doing, the opportunities for department goals, which I call them project improvement, initiatives, will also jump at you. If you have metrics that are consistently underperforming, those will make, perfect opportunities for you to go back and say, okay, why are we always having trouble, with blood culture contamination rate, for example? Is there anything we need to look at, in terms of the disinfection of the area, maybe the bottles that we're how we're handling the battles or the culture, process. And so again, it depends on what you're looking at, but I think there's an opportunity to do both in the laboratory.
Yeah, Nancy, I fully agree with you. And it's also, to answer the question, to have a holistic understanding of your lab value chain. In other words, who's your clients, where does your specimen or your request come from? And that places demand on your lab. And we know that demand is dependent on many things, seasonality, outbreaks, like we currently, experience, week, day of the week, things like that, sample priority. And then when all that samples move into your lab, how do you align your resources, with that demand? Where you have your infrastructure, your technology, your people, and all the consumables, your inventory management, and everything that goes back with that. And how do you get that service back to your customer, to the end user, to the doctor, to the patient? And that is where your performance metrics sit, And then do you use, like, for example, a Sancon model, which is quality, cost, speed, dependability, or flexibility, or do you use a performance management system, that looks at your finances, your internal business processes, your safety, health, environment, risk, and quality, your people, or what is it? And then then that basically, inform your dashboards, as you just said, and to check that dashboards and make sure, where's the leakages and where am I going wrong. So from that point, to identify where is it that we need to start. So if you're not doing well regarding, let's say, for example, your turnaround time, so that will most probably link back to your internal business processes, and then start the whole process in sequence. With all the things that you've mentioned, in terms of root cause analysis and everything regarding that. So we use the 7 quality tools inside this thing as a tool to analyze my data. And I think what people don't realize is the power of their LIS. What information is inside your LIS that can actually inform you? And the data is there, but we don't use the data because that can give you information about, what type of test do I perform in my lab? Who's my customers? What is the volumes? What is what is the arrival patterns over a specific period in time? How can I align my resources with that? All that information sits in my LIS, and how do I take that data and analyze it? So it's like, it's so interesting if you start working in the nuts and bolts of these things, So I really think people miss out if they don't know that.
Yeah, and I wanted to add something based on this question. And I love what Nancy said about, is it a crisis? Say the pandemic. In a normal situation, hopefully we'll have already set up our departmental goals or organizational goals. And, when you do your risk assessment, as Andre is saying, are these results aligned with the goal that we set for organization? Because that's our ultimate thing. We want to make sure we're setting goals or targets that are aligned. So I think in terms of like setting up a business case, you want to make sure that your business case is aligned with what the organization wants as a goal or the objectives. However, if that's not done, if you don't have goals, then maybe that's one of the first things that you would do to make sure that the organization as a whole know where we're going, because you need that North Star. However, in a situation where it's maybe a crisis, you may just focus on one thing. However, Andre says very holistic. You should be looking at all these different areas, all these different metrics, but yeah, it's subjective, because sometimes we just have to move and fix it. Like, this is a risk assessment, focus on just this.
Correct.
But generally, we're going to do a full risk assessment of everything before we even make any move forward. I have another question from Angela. Angela is saying, is your preferred method for improvement using the DMAIC or the PDCA?
I personally like PDCA. I think it just it's more aligned with how laboratorians think, anyways. So it's like the planning, checking, all what the acronym means. And so I personally don't use, I don't know about you, Andre, but I personally don't use the DMAIC as much. We utilize more like the PDCA, PDCA in our laboratory.
Yeah, if I think about how we conduct the full process from cradle to grave, then it aligns more with the DMAIC. So PDCA is like for me a component within that process. It's identifying a small area, make the changes, see if it works, and if it works, you go bigger. But I think it's also depends on what you do. But the thing is, you cannot just in my opinion, you focus on one thing. You must know these are all the things. The example that I've used when you bake a cake, and you must really know which instrument, which tool is the best to use, in a specific case, and how to apply all these. You must have the capability to do that. So yeah, I think it really depends on what you do. I personally, align with the DMAIC because it's more a big picture, holistic thing, that you can do.
Yeah, I also love DMAIC, and I like the idea that PDCA or PDCA is a tool that can be used based on a scenario or a situation, maybe a quick fix, or if you're working on an area that you need a quick fix, whereas with DMAIC, you're involving metrics and you're trying to prove that based on these metrics, the improvement works. So it's more detailed. And so, especially with process management, like a big process management, if you're looking at performance improvement and looking at big picture thinking, then DMAIC is a great tool because of the metric that's involved, and you're proving that your improvement actually work based using data. So that's why I like that.
Yeah, I think you can also PDCA can also be powerful if I may change the abbreviation and I add a S. So PDCA. So it's plan, do, simulate to give you certainty, check, act. Then it's also a very, very powerful tool. But yes, I don't think there's a right or a wrong. It's what you feel comfortable with and a thing that's going to work for you and enhance patient care. Because by the end of the day, that is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what the scenario is. Let's see, Angela. Okay, she liked both perspective, because both, you can get something out of. Yeah, as we say, they're all tools to be
Correct.
used in different situations.
Yeah.
So that
depends on the scenario, pretty much.
Yes. So I'm not sure for medical lab professionals. I know that the tools are there. So how could, say, I'm on the bench, I'm doing the work, how could I utilize some of those tools in my day-to-day? Is it something that I can utilize, or is it something that has to be done by leadership?
If I can answer that one, and I think Nancy, you will support me. I think you cannot do these things on your own. You need to work as a team. And the problem is, if your team doesn't understand process, right, you as a leader will not be able to make that leap to the next step. So if you have 10 benches in your laboratory, every person must understand, what are they doing. And the problem is that you learn incorrect things from previous people. So if you allow me, I'm quickly going to tell you a story. In his book, Primo Levi, he was a scientist and he was working in a varnish company, and he found out one day the process stopped, and he asked, why did the process stop? And they say, but we don't have onions. And he said, but onions can't be part of this process. They say onions is part of that process. And then he investigated that, and he said many years back, before they had temperature probes, they took a raw onion and they throw it into the mixture to test the temperature. So if the onion boiled away, they know that the temperature of the varnish was fine. Okay. And then as technology advances, they had temperature probes that measure the temperature of the varnish and everything. But because the people learned the wrong methodology, or not the wrong methodology, it was good at that point in time, they were still throwing onions in the varnish. Can you see how much wastage that they have in terms of onions and doing that? So what I normally say is you must get rid of the onion in the varnish. So every person must be empowered to understand processes, what they need to do, so that they can realize themselves, is the way that I'm doing this work, are there any onions in the varnish? The easiest way to see that is if you do a process map of your lab. And because if you have 10 people that's working in your lab, and I can bet you now, if you ask them to tell me the process, you will get 10 different answers.
Yeah.
So that is the starting point for me. And then how do you get rid of those onions in the varnish? So your multiplication factor, if you have 10 people in your lab, each working at a different bench, and they can realize, how can I do my work more effectively and efficiently? That is when you are going to make the leap. And that will support the laboratory leader in terms of that. So in my opinion, you must empower every person, maybe not at the extensive level of go the full Monty from cradle to grave, but where I'm working, you must understand what is it that I do and how do I get rid of that onions in the varnish.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I fully agree with what Andre is saying. In addition to that, process improvement cannot happen without leadership support. I think we're all saying the same thing. You could have different scenarios. You could have, a staff that really needs to get that training to understand process and process improvement and get their buy-in. Or you could have staff that is ready and they're like, we really want to make this better, and they have the initiative. But if the support doesn't come from above, if the leadership is not on board, if they're not listening to the feedback and moving things forward, getting obstacles out of the way, that's our job. And so I think it's a combination of both things. It's the educational piece that needs to happen and the buy-in from the people side. And then there's that leadership support that has to be there in order for these things to happen. Because, a lot of the frontline staff, they don't have access to resources or maybe the authority to make changes that are, department-wide, or changes to processes and things like that. Those tools, that ability resides with management and with leadership.
I fully agree with you.
Love that. So basically, you're saying that the frontline people should still be empowered to recognize the need for change, should be empowered to speak up or give their feedback, or be able to identify when there's a problem. However, leadership is necessary in order to have the actual change taking place.
Yeah,
and
correct.
As you said.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, one of the things that I try to build relationship with my staff is I just tell them, I say, don't live with the problems. If you know that we're having issues with XYZ, bring it up to my attention. And then I make a conscious effort to make sure that they know if they bring it up to my attention and we fix something, we do it together, or either something that I can just do on my own, that we bring it back to them and say, thank you, that was really good feedback. Here's the result. Continue to do the same, because look, now we improved this process and things are better. So I think there's an important piece of closing the loop and making sure that people feel appreciated and heard. About the feedback that they're bringing to your attention, so that it's not just going into one ear, out the other. And they start to feel valued. They're like, okay, well, this is good. And sometimes, not everything they're going to bring to your attention might require a process improvement initiative, but that's not the point. The point is to establish that relationship, the two-way communication that needs to be happening between management and the frontline staff. And when we see opportunities for projects or things that do need to be fixed, then we involve them in the process, because it's actually, process improvement is quite interesting. It's kind of like going from point A to point B and everything that happens in between, right? And so I think we lose sight of the fact that a lot of people do like to be involved in that process, and they like to see things get better and have their names attached to that. So I think a big part of it is just that, including your staff and recognizing their ideas.
Yeah, it's a team effort, Nancy. The leader alone cannot do it. The people on their own cannot do it.
Yeah.
So it's the leadership team must know what is it that how do they manage and lead their team. The team must know what do they need to look at, and all of these things need to be linked, to the operational objectives of the lab. So the string goes from C-suite down to operational level, and that is how you need to look at that.
Sure.
Great. So I know while you're talking about that, I know we kind of talk about generally, but could you give us like some great reasons, like the whys for process improvement? Why anybody listening to you today would want to either empower their team or to introduce any performance improvement, process improvement in their lab? Either of you who wanted to
probably share, Andrea. I know you have probably a lot of feedback about that too. A big one, as I mentioned earlier, is patient care. Improving processes so that we can become more efficient and more accurate. Improve the performance of the laboratory, boosts morale. And Andrea, I don't know if you want to chime in and add a few more.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Nancy. It's all about patient care and making us live longer. And I think people undervalue, or underestimate the value that lab professionals play in our lives. And in order for labs to make me or help me to live longer, and you want a quality test result. And if you just look at the 11 quality essentials that's outside there, all of those boxes need to be ticked. People need to be well educated and trained when they do their jobs. So all of the policies and procedures and things need to be checked. You need to be able to handle the demand. You need to be able to get the specimen through the laboratory as quickly as you can. And how do you optimize your processes to get that right? You need to get your lab team basically, to support the clinician, like for example, clinical decision support. Because a doctor or a physician is trained in, medicine, but lab professionals, are trained in diagnostics. So how do you support that? And each one of these things is a process, and you need to make sure that you optimize that process and that the process are efficient and effectively to support each of these domains. So by the end of the day, to support me as a patient, that you can help me solve my problem as quickly as we can. But we do all of this because of patient care.
Sounds great. Patient care, that's the center of it all. And I know we probably got to your comment late, Wilhelm. Sometimes performance improvement can be so overwhelming. It is important to have a performance improvement framework. And I think Andre spoke a little bit about something, the framework that's used in POP, but how can other medical lab professionals learn more and even know more about, utilizing frameworks? And between Nancy and Andre, how do you think that they could learn more process improvement, understand these tools and be able to utilize it in the labs?
Yeah, I think, you got different frameworks, and the framework is back to the recipe that we refer to. So we try to put it in like a really straight language to people so that they can understand it. So there's the 8 principles of laboratory performance that's derived from over 23 years of lab performance improvement. So and the 8 principles are, the first one is boost the bottom line or bust, and the second one is lead with a common language. The third one is trust the transparency, and that will help you to structure your lab. And then the fourth one is facts or figures, no fluff. The fifth one is driven by decisiveness. The sixth one is accuracy is paramount, and that will give you certainty in practice. And then you need to sustain these. And then we use the last 2 principles, which is big impact, big small, and knowledge knows no bounds, where you empower and to share your knowledge with the people. So I think there's many frameworks out there, but the one that's tried and tested over years for me is the 8 principles of lab performance that will take you from the beginning to the end and empower everybody that really wants to, have a positive impact on their processes and the way how they do work. So Nancy, I don't know your feeling.
No, I
So
agree. I think
that's
Lona and I are both POP graduates, so we totally understand the language that you're speaking.
It's proprietary framework.
I also think there's so many different frameworks out there that, it doesn't hurt to go out and look at what other industries are using. A good one that's mentioned several times out there is the Toyota production system. Just go out there and look at what Toyota was doing to improve their processes, and then later on how that was adopted by the healthcare institutions in America, and the impact that that resulted in once those tools and techniques were applied. So I think it's just, there's so much information nowadays available through either formal degrees, programs like the ones that Andre is speaking about with the Power Process, and just generally online. There's the Six Sigma, the Lean, process mapping, etc. That I think people will find it, but I think it all starts with the mindset. And I just want to take it back to that piece because as laboratory managers or people in laboratory leadership as a whole, we get so busy just handling operations, just handling the day-to-day, that it's really easy to lose sight of the process improvement aspect. I think we worry a little bit more about regulatory compliance because we have no choice. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, inspection is coming, or I need to remain inspection ready because I know that's going to result in a consequence. But my whole perspective on quality is, yes, the regulatory aspect is important. We need to remain, compliant, and we need to have our license so that we can run our tests. But then there's the other arm of quality, which is process improvement. And sometimes I feel like that's easy to overlook if we just, pay attention to the day-to-day and the operations. And without really understanding that paying attention to the process improvement will make your operation more efficient. And will improve the performance and will boost the morale of your staff, might give you some cost savings if that's what you're looking for, will improve your regulatory compliance with whatever accreditation agency you have your license with. So I think it's often an aspect of quality that is missed, and we should pay more attention to it.
Yeah, I also, in terms of the comment that Wilhelm has made, performance improvement can be so overwhelming. I think, you get left brain people and right brain people. And let's say when you're more right brained and graphic, it can be, I want to run away when I see these things. And the thing is, how do you eat an elephant? Bit by bit. So you need to take this elephant, cut it into pieces, and eat it bit by bit. And that is where your frameworks come in, to help you to resolve this. You cannot tackle this thing, at once. And that's also coming back to the question about, where do you start? Root cause analysis or, your performance matrix. Your performance matrix is the indicator that is on your dashboard. I don't have fuel in my car. You will not drive another 200 miles if you don't have fuel in your car. So that's the thing that you need to address. So that performance matrix will tell you, where am I bleeding? And then you cut that down to pieces and then apply your framework to know, where do I need to start this, so that it is not overwhelming, that you can empower your staff to fix those problems and use whatever resources you need to enable you to do that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I suppose we could be here another
I know.
There's just so much to process improvement, and we're getting still getting a few comments. We're just gonna just show these, and we're gonna wrap up. Patty's saying great information, thank you. Dennis is saying this is fantastic discussion, lots of takeaway. Christina is saying, how does the 12 pillars of quality fall into your framework? And it's more about just addressing those outcomes, because those are the outcomes that we want to see in the lab. Yeah. And how do you actually address it? And Andre could jump on it. I know he brought it up. But basically, when you utilize these tools help us to accomplish those 12 pillars of the. So, Andre, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, if you look at the 12 pillars, of quality, it's like, your organization, for example, and I think, that's specific, the alignment from what you want to achieve as an organization to your bottom line. There's the personnel equipment, the personnel component, which is all about human performance, your SOPs, your development plans, your job descriptions, and so on. There's your equipment portion. That's all processes. How do I procure my equipment? How do I buy it? How do I maintain it? How do you manage purchasing and inventory? How do I do my process control? How do I look at my information management system? How do I look at my ISO 15189 compliance in my in my assessment? How do I handle occurrence management? How do I manage my document and record system? How do I do my process improvement? I mean, it's one of the pillars of that, and we just spoken in this discussion on one of it. How do I handle customer service and demand, and how do I do my facilities and safety? And if you think about all these things that we do in terms of process improvement, you can apply this structure, this framework in each one of those quality elements. So if you do this and you have the generic framework and the skills to do that, you will be able to influence each one of those 12 elements. That's what I believe.
Right. Yes. All right. And Christina is saying operational issues drive your process improvement.
Yeah, and I think
so we're
a good comment. Thank you, Christina. No, I was agreeing with Christina, because I think sometimes we tend to see operational issues separate from quality. It's almost like two different arms, but really they feed into each other. So I was just agreeing with her.
Yes, it helps us to achieve our full objective, not just quality indicators, which depending on what we use for quality indicators could be other performances. So it's looking at everything. So the goal is to accomplish the whole operational, and that's why I focus on operational excellence, because with operational excellence, you're looking at everything from people, process, operation, bottom line. And that's how LabOPEX came about. It's basically lab operational excellence, looking at the whole holistic. So thank you so much. As I said, there's just so much to this discussion. I had so much fun, Andre and Nancy, having this discussion. I know we're just, it's just a little bit when it comes to the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more beyond when it comes to process improvement. So let the audience know how they can connect with you if they want to get more information, if they want to learn more. We'll start with Nancy.
Sure. So thank you so much, Lorna, for having me. It was a great discussion. It's a great passion of mine to talk about process improvement and laboratory processes as a whole. You can find me on LinkedIn, Nancy Ross, or you can find me through the consulting company, which is improvelabs.com. And so I look forward to connecting with a lot of you and continuing to talk about process improvement. So thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you very much for having me on your show as well. I really enjoyed it. As I said, it's one of my passions. People can also get me on LinkedIn, Andre Gous, or they can visit our website, joinpop.org, or they can also find me on labvinelearning.com. Thank you very much. It was an amazing opportunity.
Thank you so much. And the audience are saying thank you. They're saying great topic. And yes, somebody, you did say Toyota, Deming,
yes,
and Toyota.
Absolutely. They're the pioneers.
Yes. So thank you all. Thank you, my beautiful audience. You guys rock. You engage the comments. You ask some great questions. Very engaging. We really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And as usual, Thursday evenings at the same time, LabOPEX Live, where we have some amazing guests talking about really interesting topics that's going to improve the lab. And, thank you. There may be one or two sessions that we may have that may not be at 7:30 based on the audience location, but we let you know, and have a great evening.
Thank you.